This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchioni, ready to talk.
Ready to talk some more. And you originally had floated the notion of repeats. And the idea that you had was that you said that after a certain age, everything just repeats. And it's the same thing again, and you just get to go through the experience one more time.
Yes, and the certain age is 50. Now, that's very important because I'm talking to a lot of people, particularly women and guys. That's the same. Anyway, 50. After 50, this was my words that have shot me in the foot, actually. Don't get all freaked out over what happens in your life. After 50, it's all a repeat. You've been here before. This is a second chance or another chance to do it again differently. Right? Pretty simple.
Okay.
Sounds fun, right? Lighthearted, encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what happened?
Well, it started repeating too many times. So I'm thinking, maybe that wasn't a good thing. Now, listen, this is the part that I really was... Yeah. Okay. So since I was from across the street, there's this devil that I could never deal. I just couldn't see it intellectually. It just didn't work for me. But when it doesn't work, you keep your mouth shut. So,
Okay.
So I embraced New Thought and, find out there's no devil. I'm thinking, okay, this is great. Never thought it was anyway. But then, after, and also I was doing a study 6 weeks on my own about the power of words. So now all of this is coming together and I'm getting these repeats and some of them I do not appreciate. So I'm thinking, so something said, it might be that devil. And I was like, maybe you were wrong about that. I'm like, no, that is not happening. That's not happening. So what we're going to do is wait for the Practical Prayer Podcast and let you unravel all of this repeats.
Okay. And I'm going to give you a broader perspective on the repeats, because the repeats is definitely part of your experience. And as you were telling me that story, it reminded me of my own story. When I was in my 40s, I went to the eye doctor. And my eyes were good, and this was good, and that was good, and everything was fine. And the eye doctor, who's very prestigious and has a long list of credentials, et cetera, said, yeah, when you turn 50, you'll need reading glasses. And it's like, whoa, wait a second. I'm a metaphysician. Don't be using that sort of language on me. Don't be saying that that's going to happen. That's not necessary. That's not required that happen. It is completely possible that this person can turn 50 and not need reading glasses. And she said, yeah, but you're going to need reading glasses when you turn 50. And it's like, oh, it's voodoo words. And I never went back to see that particular eye doctor again. And when I turned 50, I needed reading glasses. And the reason for that is that I believed her. I went to her because she had a lot of credibility and the credentials and everything else, and she spoke with great authority. And even though I objected to it immediately, her voodoo words had some power. And I have, now they're not just reading glasses. Now they're all-purpose glasses with the progressive lenses, so I can see all sorts of different things and not much without them. So when we use those words, even if it's casually, as you say, with repeats, when this happens, the repeats happen. Everything's a repeat. And the universe only has one answer. It says, as we know, yes. Yeah. And when we set the intention and open a channel for that yes to happen, that's what shows up. And with that in mind, is it any surprise that there are more repeats than you want? When the repeats in your life are sounding like a record skipping.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And yes. And it's amazing because I read a lot and I study a lot, because I just want to learn more and more and more. But I'm bumping into things in my own belief system that were just, I guess, dormant or something, or just not headline beliefs, but bullet point beliefs.
Right.
And they count too, I'm seeing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing that catches most folks by surprise is that when we say it's done as you believe, it's not what you say you believe. It's not what you have learned and then committed to and say, I want to believe this. It's what we actually believe. And it shows up in all kinds of different ways. It shows up, it's everything. It's all in our belief system. And if there's something that's showing up in your life that you don't like, and you don't believe that should be part of your life, then the thing to look at is, what is it that's hidden in there someplace that's making me believe that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And more importantly, is there something different I can believe? Now, solving your repeats is really easy.
I'm listening.
I thought that would capture your attention. You have set the intention and expressed very firmly that you believe that after 50, everything repeats. And you are now in that age range, and it's repeating. And what is active in your experience is that belief. And you can't unbelieve it. But what you can do is you can believe something else in addition.
Wait a minute. Why can't I unbelieve it?
You can't take a belief out. You have to replace it with something else. It's like,
I can take it out and replace it.
Yeah. It's like, if you have a glass that's filled with dirty water and you want to clean it out, you dump the water and you fill it with fresh water. Mm-hmm. A blood transfusion does not work the same way. You can't take out all the blood and then replace it with new blood. You got to put in a little and let it work for a while, and then put a little more and let that work for a little while and put a little more, and you clean it out that way. And the same thing is true in our beliefs. We can't clear them out and just get rid of them. We have to put a new belief in there to displace the old belief. We can turn away from the old belief and take the power away from it and have the new belief that we're putting in become that much more applicable or relevant. But we can't just erase the old one.
Okay.
I know that's really sad, isn't it?
Yes, because it really wasn't something that I thought was that anybody taught me or anything like that. It was nothing more than a cliche of my own. Right. I mean, I thought that it made a little bit of sense, but I would never have put it in a class and said this is actually a fact. But it made a little bit of sense because
a little bit of sense. Nice pithy statement, and then the universe said yes, and that's the repeat. It started going on echo. And
you know what? Go ahead.
No, you tell me your story.
Now, I was going to say this is what I do with the universe now. I started doing this a couple of years ago. I'm not talking to you. I just said that. I don't mean it was a joke. Forget it. That was not you. Because that's the way I catch myself sometime. And I'm like, look, I'm not talking to you, universe.
Mm-hmm.
Chill. Okay.
Yeah. And when we do that, when we said something and we don't want that to be the controlling factor in our life, we can stop and step back and say, and that's a little tiny piece of it. That's not the entire core of my meaning. And that's the way that you replace the experience that you're having with the repeats. Can the repeats happen and be every once in a while, not a continuous cadence? Is it possible for that schedule to be different in your mind?
Now you correct me, but I'm going to think about it, and I'm trashing that because it doesn't have to be that way.
Well,
it just, you know what I mean? I didn't get it
there's a
from the
glimmer of
Bible or
truth
anything.
there. There's a glimmer of truth there. And by the time somebody turns 50, they've got a certain body of experience, and the chances of something brand new coming up is less likely than when we're 18.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, because of the experience, because especially with the background that you have with people, I mean, you've seen so much, you've experienced so much that, yeah, there are going to be some repeats. And that's called learning. When the first time we have an experience, it completely surprises us. And the second time we have an experience, we can draw on our previous experience and use that as a data point and a guideline. And it's actually really good. It's called education. It's called learning. And, my pithy statement is that experience is that which keeps us from making the same mistake over again, or perhaps just recognizing a mistake as we're making it again.
Mm-hmm.
And the experience part is good. So the different experiences and stimuli that are coming in are going to have some similarity to them. So there will be that possibility of some degree of repeats. Claiming that it can't happen at all would probably be inviting in all sorts of mayhem into our lives. But it doesn't have to be over and over and over and over again. It doesn't have to be the annoying ones. So the prayer that I would do in that case, the intention that I would set, is for not everything to be a repeat, but for the areas where my previous experience and understanding can be helpful, are come up in a way that I'm able to have an even better response this time, and let go of the thought that everything is a repeat after 50. And sometimes there's a repeat after 50.
So I'll just trash the statement.
We just take the energy out of it. Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely stop saying it.
Definitely.
Because if we keep saying stuff like, oh, I'm going to need reading glasses, then I will.
I mean, there have been certain things in life I've very clearly said, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. And I don't spend a whole lot of time on it because, there's a lot of things that I just don't believe anyway. So the likelihood of it happening is no. But then these other little things, and I kind of did believe that repeat thing, though. I really did, because I just...
Well, if it's showing up, then you obviously believed it.
But then again, I had to say to myself now, did you do the same thing that you did the last time that caused this thing to come up again? You can't just look at the event. You have to be honest and look at what precipitated the event and then figure out how to make some adjustments that doesn't happen again. But it's just crazy, and I was... I'm recognizing it like, I've been here before. What? There was a Twilight Zone thing. I'm sure it was Twilight Zone where this guy was getting off, I think it was Wimbledon or was something station. He was getting on the train every morning and he'd go and it always would pull back into the same station. And he just couldn't figure out what was going on in his life. And I thought, is this the Twilight Zone show that I just like locked into my head? Because I actually have referred to that show several times and found it on YouTube because it's just so telling. But I thought, well, maybe I locked that thing in. Forget this. I got to get rid of this. Take it out of my saves in YouTube.
Okay. A little transfusion.
Yeah.
Let's take a break and we will continue talking about repeats, voodoo words, and repeats. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at bethelight.com. That's b-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at bethelight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni. This one is
We're having a wonderful conversation about repeats and the way that our words and our intentions show up in our lives, sometimes in an annoying, overwhelming kind of fashion. You had mentioned before the break that sometimes you tell the universe what you don't want. And I do the same thing. Every once in a while, a random thought will come to my mind, and it might be about an illness, or it might be about a challenge or a difficulty, and I'll immediately drop into prayer to acknowledge that that thought doesn't have any power, that there is a universe of possibilities, and my good is available to me, and I'm choosing all the good that's available to me, and there's no need for this whatever illness or discomfort or challenge to come my way. Because our minds are always creating. And if we are, especially if we find ourselves worrying or obsessing about something, it's really time to change something in our mentality, because those thoughts are getting into our belief system. And eventually, if we think them often enough, we will believe them.
And you don't know that you believe them. Fair statement?
Oh, true. Absolutely true. The only way that we know that what we believe is to look at our life, because our life is the map of our beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a hall in the house, and it's really not a long hall. I mean, this is a condo, so it's not that big. But that hall sometimes seems so long. I'll walk down this hall and I'm thinking about something, and I have often said, do you really believe that? Like, where did that come from? And it didn't come from nowhere. It had to be there. But either it was dormant, or I wasn't faced with it, or whatever. And I'll really stop and think about that. You know, if not just not stop in the hall, but go sit down, maybe write it out, or say, what in the world is this exactly? Because if it's going to be as I believe, and this is the way it is, there's a conflict here, and I don't like it.
So is the belief the notion that the hall is really big, or what's?
It's where thoughts come sometimes, you know. It just, I don't know, just sometimes the hall just seems so long when something is not happening right in my head or in my thoughts. And I'll just stop and think, this is crazy. You need to stop whatever you're doing and think about this. And I put a high value on what we think.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, because you have so many thoughts and they can get away from you. And for me, I just suggest that you just stop and don't think that something isn't important, even just because it sounds trivial, like saying after 50, everything is blah, blah, blah. That sounds so trivial. You know, like I didn't get that. Like I said, I didn't get it from the Bible or any other book. It's just, it's a Carolism. Well, I've had to throw Carolisms out before.
Yeah.
I just didn't know that that your words were that powerful, that creative. Little things happen to make me understand that.
Yeah. And that one got in, and there was nothing pushing back against it. And it started to show up in your experience. And it's like, yeah, see, there it is. There's a repeat happening. And that reinforces our belief and strengthens it and deepens it. And then it becomes that much more difficult to change it because it becomes part of our fabric. And we can use those experiences as an opportunity to beat ourselves up and say, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm believing this. How did I do this to myself? It's an inside job. I'm not worthy. I'm and all the rest of that. And that's not necessary either. When we notice what we believe, which we can do by observing the things that are going on in our lives, we can use that as input to say, is this the experience I want to be having? And if it is, great, keep doing that. And if it's not, if you're getting tired of the repeats, if you're getting annoyed by the way this is going on, what do I want to have instead? What does that pivot look like? What is the belief that I'm going to, and we'd like to replace that belief, but we're going to augment that belief with, yes, things are repeating after age 50, but not everything is repeating, and it's not repeating really fast, and it is repeating in a way that is uplifting and helpful and harmonious to me and the people around me, rather than something that's distracting me from living my life joyously. And I would guess that you can feel as I'm saying that, well, that's okay. Yeah, I can go in that direction. I can start there and then eventually get rid of all of them instead of having it be, as they would say in the real estate biz, a gut job or a tear down.
What I was actually thinking was, that's really complicated. You know what? I'm simply not saying that anymore. If I feel it, it's not coming up. I'm not saying that this is how you should do it. I'm listening to you, and you're doing it. It's very cerebral, the way you were just going at that just now. And I thought, oh, no, this repeat will take me down the, this is it. That's out. I'm not saying that anymore. I don't believe it. It was crazy to begin with. I was only having fun. No.
Oh yeah, well, that I completely agree with. You definitely get to stop saying it, because if you continue saying it, it continues to reinforce your belief, and that'll continue to reinforce your experience. So by all means, stop saying that. So change your words and change your thinking. And the other part about changing your belief is that it's already active. It's already in there in your subconscious, inviting in repeats, and that's the part that you want to dilute that down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So when the repeats come along, they're subtle and they are uplifting and informative and helpful. And there's no need for repeats happening all the time. There's the opportunity for the cadence and the texture of them to turn into something that is much more helpful and harmonious with the rest of my life.
I think what was helpful for me in this case is saying that the repeats are not helpful. They're not creating anything positive in my life. Now, listen.
There's some language in there. They're not creating anything positive in my life. Anything? There has never been a repeat where there's nothing that's come up where you had an experience and your friend of yours was having the same experience and you were able to call on what happened at the end of your experience and say, oh, well, I've been there and
Well, you're very generously talking about repeats. Generally, I'm talking about certain specific repeats.
And I'm saying
There
bigger.
is no need for this.
There is no need for the annoying ones. That is absolutely true. The ones that are pushing your buttons, okay, but don't try and throw the baby out with the bathwater, because
Okay, I agree with you. I agree
so-
with that.
So yeah, and that's part of the languaging, that the annoying and disturbing and unhelpful nature of this mental process or experiential process, it can fade into the background, can just go away, and I can be left with only the stuff where I am able to take advantage and extract the value from my previous experience and apply that to the new experience, so that I don't have to learn the same lesson over and over again.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because how often have you learned the same lesson over and over again?
Maybe. Well,
Maybe once or twice?
Yeah, suppose it means that you didn't get it the first time.
Well,
And
yeah.
then here it comes again.
Right. Oh, if there's something for us to learn, if there's something for us to change, we will be invited multiple times to get on board with that.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. It's just sometimes you just wonder, look, are you paying? Like I wrote something about 6 months ago, pay attention to your life. And I wasn't. I thought it was just a nice thing, right? I just wrote it. I wrote a blog and it was nice and it made a lot of sense. And then a couple of maybe, just throw it out there, a couple months later, I'm thinking, but this is something that you didn't take care of. And then little things I'm seeing, this is part of, was that to, then I said, wait a minute, everything that comes to you may not be to go out. Maybe you need to, dine on this before you share it.
Or at least at the same time, yeah.
Now that has been a real repeat. So much so that I said, wait a minute, I need to slow this writing down because I don't know what kind of energy is going on here. And that might be another, conversation. I don't know. But too many times, I'll just say in the last year, I've looked at things that are happening. I think, you wrote about that. What? You just wrote it and threw it out. It was you know what I mean? Hey, it sounded good. I wrote it. Yeah. It's going to come back.
Well, it applied to your life, and when you wrote it, you knew that it was the truth. You didn't think it was necessarily going to come back and apply to you immediately in the way that it did. But you get to own that part of it. Let's take another break, and when we come back, we'll find a way to do a prayer that whatever voodoo words we've been using vanish into the background.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione. This conversation has been amazing.
Yeah, we've been talking about voodoo words and the way that we can use our creative power to create something that we really didn't want, or allow somebody else to create an experience that we didn't particularly want. And as it's been coming up for Carol, repeats. Saying, well, after 50, everything is a repeat. And then there are way too many repeats to the point where it's just gotten too rapid fire and too annoying.
Yes.
Yes. And so the idea is, once we've done that, or inadvertently done that to ourselves, how do we undo that?
Let me ask you something too, because I don't want to get away without clarifying this for me. Voodoo words.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
To me, the voodoo words are when we say something, or we let something be said in front of us that we give a lot of power to. So if somebody is using language, and they might not think that it's creative, they might not think that it's important, like my ophthalmologist telling me that when I turned 50, I'd need reading glasses. By using that language, by saying that in front of me and hooking my attention, as Don Miguel Ruiz would put it, was able to plant that idea in my subconscious, so that became part of my belief system. And when we do that, either to ourselves, in your case, or when we let somebody else do that to us, as in my case, it becomes operative in our belief system, and that's the experience we get to have. And it keeps on working until we replace those words with something else. So, and my term is voodoo words, and that's just one of those things that I came up with. And upon reflection, it could be very offensive to people who use voodoo in a helpful way.
Well, yeah, I was thinking that. That's why I wanted to make sure. Maybe I need to know what that means. But could you say, could we use power, the power of words?
It's actually more unintentional suggestion.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to say unintentional because a lot of times when people are saying things like that, they don't think it's a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think that it's a suggestion that they're making. It just works that way in our experience. So let's change that to unintentional suggestion. And now let's do a prayer. And the prayer, as we are understanding these things that have happened in our lives, the beliefs that we've had that have generated experiences that maybe we're not that happy with, the beliefs have been caused by getting hooked in by words, or by a notion, or by a concept, or by an experience that's really not serving us. And the way that we transform from that experience to the experience that we'd prefer to have is to pivot. So the prayer is about a pivot as we acknowledge and understand that which has been going on up until now, and choose the experience that we want to have instead. The experience we want to have instead is not that thing going away. That just leaves a vacuum. We want to have the experience that we're having be something different. What is that new experience filled with? And it's different for everybody, because everybody has their own experience that that we're done with, that we're ready to let go of. And we get to pivot into something new. And in every case, the prayer can be exactly the same. We turn our attention away from the world around us, from the details, from the specifics, and open ourselves up to the awareness of that infinite creative power, that divine presence, that one love, that source that shares itself as all of its creation. Regardless of what we call it God or nature or spirit or Big Sweetie or the Big Bang or a happy coincidence, whatever it is that is the source of everything that exists. It is one source sharing itself in multiple ways. Everything in creation is that one expressed in its own way. Billions of planets, billions of galaxies, billions of stars, billions of people, each an individualized expression of that divine love, and all that same love in expression. So everything that is possible anywhere is possible everywhere. It's possible to each of us. The experiences that we have been having up until now do not need to dictate the experiences that we're having next. So as each of us understands, identifies, and acknowledges that which is no longer serving us, we are pivoting, even now, and turning our awareness to the uplifting, joyous, harmonious, prosperous, prosperous, healthy, vibrant, comfortable, loving, creative, delightful experience that we are inviting instead. That process of turning away from that which is no longer serving us and opening to that which is of interest and uplift and that we describe as good and happy and harmonious and joyous. As we go through that process, as we open ourselves up to that next new experience, the infinite creative power, that one divine presence that shares itself as everything, that's sharing itself as us, begins sharing itself as this new experience, as us and for us and through us and with us. And that good is already happening now. As we pivot and open to the newness is happening. And the stories are different for everyone. Each person within the sound of my voice is having a different experience of moving through this transformation from the old experience through the pivot to the new experience and having that new experience show up even more richly and fully and joyously in our lives. And it's going on right now for all of us. I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the awareness of the process. I'm grateful for the ability to pivot. I'm grateful for all of the experiences that have led up until this moment of transformation to inform us as to the new experience that we'd like to have. That stuff that's happened in the past is not bad. It has brought us to this now moment. And we are now creating something new from it. And so with gratitude for all of this good, already unfolding and still to be, with gratitude for the awareness of the process and the willingness of each one to engage in it, I speak this word and I release it into that creative law. And I know it's already saying, yes, this good is already happening. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.